Statements by Vladimir Putin and Ilham Aliyev to the media. Following bilateral talks, the leaders of Russia and Azerbaijan made statements to the media. In the presence of the heads of state, there was also an exchange of documents signed during Vladimir Putin's state visit to the Republic of Azerbaijan. Ilham Aliyev. Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich. Dear guests. Dear friends. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guests. The President of the Russian Federation is making a state visit to Azerbaijan. This visit holds special significance. Our high-level meetings are regular. This year, we have already met twice, once in Moscow and once on the sidelines of an international event. However, the format and nature of a state visit are unique, if I may say so, and they underscore the high level of our interstate relations. The documents adopted today, especially the joint declaration of the presidents, once again confirm the friendly and allied nature of our relations. The provisions of the Declaration on Allied Interaction, signed in February 2022, are being successfully implemented. Our countries act as allies, friends, close partners, and neighbors. Today, we had a thorough discussion of a wide range of interstate relations. Even just looking at the composition of the delegations, it's clear that the scope of our interstate cooperation is extensive. We conducted a detailed analysis of issues related to trade and economic relations. The growth in trade turnover last year and in the first 6 months of this year indicates the vast potential for cooperation. Last year, we surpassed the $4 billion mark, and we exchanged views on how this is certainly not the limit. Special attention is always given to humanitarian cooperation. In Azerbaijan, there are 324 schools where instruction is conducted in Russian, with around 160,000 students enrolled. More than 800,000 students study Russian as a second language. In 26 universities in Azerbaijan, there are departments with instruction in Russian, with over 15,000 students enrolled. The branch campuses of Lomonosov Moscow State University and Sechenov Medical University are functioning successfully. Today, we also discussed the development of relations in the field of education. In our narrow-format meeting, we also thoroughly discussed issues related to regional security. After September of last year, a completely new situation has emerged in the region. Azerbaijan has fully restored its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Naturally, this new situation opens up new opportunities for establishing a lasting and long-term peace in the South Caucasus. The stability and security of the entire South Caucasus region largely depend on close cooperation between Russia and Azerbaijan. We also discussed in detail the implementation of the North-South project, which is of paramount importance not only for our interstate relations but also for issues related to regional transport corridors and routes. I must say that on the territory of Azerbaijan, both the railway and road segments of the North-South corridor have been fully realized and are functioning successfully. At present, we are actively working on modernizing the railway section of this corridor to increase its capacity. We are talking about the possibility of transporting 15 million tons of cargo annually, and possibly more, up to 30 million tons, which is quite realistic. In this regard, both Russia and Azerbaijan, and I hope other participants in this corridor, will continue their efforts together. Again, I must say that this year we have already allocated around $120 million, in dollar equivalent, for the modernization of this railway section to achieve the required capacity. There are 20 flights per day between various cities in Russia and Azerbaijan. I must note that even during Soviet times, there were not as many mutual flights. Moreover, these flights are roughly equally divided between Azerbaijani and Russian carriers. This demonstrates that contacts between people are regular, and we also noted the increase in mutual visits between the citizens of our countries. In the energy sector, we conducted a detailed analysis of the situation in both the oil and gas sector and the electricity sector. We are actively working in this direction, and I am confident that we will continue to coordinate our activities. We also exchanged views on an issue of concern to both sides, namely, the environmental situation in the Caspian Sea and its catastrophic shallowing. From the window of the room where we held our negotiations, I showed Vladimir Vladimirovich the rocks that were still underwater 2 years ago but are now a meter above the surface. We are observing this along the entire coastline of the Absheron Peninsula, and not only there, but along the entire coast of Azerbaijan. We have agreed to jointly analyze the situation and outline measures to prevent a possible environmental disaster, both bilaterally and in a 5-party format. The signs of this ecological disaster are already visible to the naked eye. I expressed my gratitude to Vladimir Vladimirovich and the Russian side as a whole for supporting Azerbaijan's candidacy to host the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change COP29 climate conference. Russia's support was exceptionally important, and we are now working on issues related to the preparation of this climate conference, including in a bilateral format. I would like to once again express my thanks to you, Vladimir Vladimirovich, for accepting my invitation and visiting Azerbaijan on a state visit. Without a doubt, this visit is historic and will make a significant contribution to strengthening the friendly and allied relations between our countries. Thank you for your attention. Vladimir Putin. Dear Ilham Aliyev. Dear friends and colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen. I would like to once again thank Ilham Aliyev for the invitation to visit the Republic of Azerbaijan on a state visit. We are very pleased to be on the hospitable soil of Azerbaijan, to admire the sights of Baku, a thriving, developing city under your leadership. I want to emphasize that Russia places great importance on developing multifaceted, friendly relations with Azerbaijan. These relations are based on principles of equality, mutual respect for each other's interests, and, of course, the close human and cultural ties that have united our peoples for centuries. During the talks that took place today and even yesterday, as we began our discussions, then I want to thank you for the warm, almost familial atmosphere that was created for the start of our meeting and joint work. And today, in a similarly cordial environment, we continued our business contacts in the fullest sense of the word. During today's negotiations, we thoroughly and constructively discussed a wide range of issues concerning our cooperation. In the joint statement adopted today, we set new, ambitious goals for the further dynamic development of the entire spectrum of bilateral relations. The documents signed today will also contribute to achieving these objectives. A great deal of attention in the negotiations was devoted to expanding mutually beneficial trade and economic cooperation. This is natural, as Russia and Azerbaijan are important economic partners for each other. As was already mentioned, and I stated this at the beginning of our meeting today, our trade turnover has exceeded $4 billion, and it is growing, with a 17% increase in the first half of this year. Over $4 billion in direct investments have been made in the Azerbaijani economy. And, of course, the nearly 1,300 enterprises with Russian participation operating in the Azerbaijani market demonstrate that our situation is developing positively and has good prospects for growth. President Aliyev just spoke about the directions in which we are working. Each of these is of real strategic significance to us. Key issues of economic cooperation are under constant oversight by our colleagues from the Intergovernmental Commission. Its latest meeting, held in Baku on the eve of our visit, was highly productive. Russia is one of the largest investors in Azerbaijan's economy, as I have already mentioned, and we are pleased about this. Our companies feel quite comfortable in the Azerbaijani market. As has already been mentioned, this includes companies like Lukoil and Kamaz, which has set up assembly production, as well as Solars, UAZ, and others. They are working successfully, and there are prospects for further development. We are grateful to the Azerbaijani authorities for the conditions created for their operations. In February, Transmash Holdings signed another contract for the production of a large batch of Russian railcars for the Baku metro. I hope that those who will use these trains will also be satisfied. The Russian United Shipbuilding Corporation, as President Aliyev also mentioned, is beginning to produce modern River Sea-class tankers for transporting petroleum products in cooperation with the Baku shipyard. Their use on the Azov Black Sea and Caspian routes, among others, will significantly increase energy supplies to global markets. I would particularly like to highlight our joint plans for the implementation of the North-South project. This will allow us to reach the shores of the Indian Ocean and use these routes to our mutual benefit and interest. Humanitarian ties are actively expanding. In June, the Days of Russian Culture were successfully held in Azerbaijan, featuring exhibitions, concerts, theatrical performances, and other significant cultural events. As is our good tradition, we invite our Azerbaijani friends to attend the 10th anniversary St. Petersburg International Cultural Forum in September. In Azerbaijan, the Russian language is widely and freely used, and we sense that this trend is strongly supported by the leadership of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Ilham Aliyev, we are grateful to you for this attention to the Russian language. The country has more than 300 schools offering instruction in Russian, and branches of Moscow State University and Sechenov Moscow Medical University have been established. At present, this was just discussed during our broader meeting. We are considering the initiative to create a Russian-Azerbaijani university in Baku. The President of Azerbaijan has supported this idea, and I hope we can implement it quickly. St. Petersburg State University is prepared to participate in this project from our side. In Russia, much is also being done to train highly qualified personnel for Azerbaijan. Currently, about 8,000 young Azerbaijanis are studying in Russian universities, including over 1,000 on Russian federal scholarships. In our countries, we honor the heroism of the Soviet people during the Great Patriotic War. We remember that our fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers defended our common homeland together and played a decisive role in saving the world from Nazism. Ilham Aliyev and I have agreed to broadly commemorate the upcoming 80th anniversary of our shared great victory. As I mentioned earlier, the negotiations also covered a range of regional issues, naturally taking into account the role that Azerbaijan plays in the Caspian region and the South Caucasus. We also touched upon current international topics. In foreign policy, both our countries firmly adhere to the principles of international law, sovereignty, and non-interference in internal affairs. Russia and Azerbaijan closely coordinate their efforts in key multilateral platforms, including the United Nations and, of course, the Commonwealth of Independent States. In October, we will be pleased to welcome Ilham Aliyev to the CIS Heads of State Council meeting in Moscow, as well as to the outreach session that will take place as part of the BRICS summit in Kazan this October. We also discussed the current state of relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I want to emphasize that Russia will continue to actively facilitate the normalization of Azerbaijani-Armenian relations and the conclusion of a peace treaty based on the well-known trilateral agreements reached by the presidents of Russia, Azerbaijan, and the Prime Minister of Armenia in 2020-2022. We are also ready to assist with the delimitation and demarcation of the border, considering that we have the relevant documents dating back to the Soviet era, and with the unblocking of cross-border routes and the establishment of humanitarian contacts. We proceed from the understanding that a lasting peace and stability in the South Caucasus fully aligns with the fundamental interests of all states and peoples of this region. In conclusion, I would like to once again emphasize that we are undoubtedly satisfied with the outcomes of this visit. I am confident that the negotiations held today and the agreements reached will further strengthen the strategic partnership between Russia and Azerbaijan. Thank you for your attention.